Hey, how you doing? My name is Chris. Welcome to my shop. Chances are if you're watching this today, it's because you watched me build this last week. It's something called a shave horse. If you haven't seen the video on the making of this, you may want to go back and take a look at that before you proceed today, just because it'll make a little bit more sense to you. But today, as promised, I'm going to go ahead and give you the measurements and the materials that I used to go ahead and put this thing together, just in case you want to make one yourself. So stick around, get your paper and pencil out, because we're going to do that next. Okay, let me move some of this stuff out of the way and I'll get to the measurements on this thing real quick. I started out when I made this, there we go, with this piece here, and as you can see, that's just a couple 2x3s with a spacer in the middle, just to kind of give me more support for the actual block that I ended up using on this thing. And the measurements on that, these were, I believe, yeah, 4 foot long. So the 2x3s that I started out with were 4 foot long. The little spacer block that I put in there was another 2x3 that gave me the distance, and I cut that to 6.5 inches, and it's the same as the block that I put into this side over here as well. So 4 feet, 2 4 foot 2x3s, and 2 6.5 inch 2x3s at the ends, just to give you a stopping point for either your block or your seat. Now, as far as the seat goes, this was just cutoffs of 2x6s, and you know, the size of your seat's going to depend on the size of your butt. If you got a big butt, you might want to go get a 2x10. But the final dimensions on this one for me was 10.5 wide and just about 10 inches long, and then obviously I just rounded up the corners to make it a little more comfortable to sit on. And the spacer block that I was talking about before that fits inside that channel, that's just a cut-off piece of 2x3 that I ended up, you know, ripping in half, and I used one half on this piece and one half on this piece, and it just slides in the middle. And at some point in time, I am going to find my comfort zone with where the seat's going to be, and I'll come down here and tack that into place so it will no longer move, because if you have the seat on here and it's moving back and forth, it's really not that good. So anyway, that's what that is. These are also 2x3s, but these were 2x3s that I ripped down the middle. So I got, you know, one 2x3 that ended up being, the final dimension on this was 30.5 inches. And obviously it was just one 2x3, 30.5 inches, and I ripped it in half so I had both sides here. The important measurements, let me get into probably, let me do the legs, and I'll go over this measurements last. As you can see on mine, I miscalculated on the height of this is a 2x4, by the way. I miscalculated on the height of this, and that's why it's not flush with the top. So I actually threw a level on it, raised this end up until I got it level, and I tacked it into place. But if you wanted to make these legs flush with the top height here, they would be either 2x3s or 2x4s cut at about 19.25 inches high. So it's 19.25 inches high this way. These back legs, first of all, this angle here is a 60-degree angle that I used to cut so I can get the legs to splay out a little bit. And these legs are 21 inches long. 21 inches long, cut at 60 degrees on either side, screwed into this, and then I reinforced this with some extra cutoffs from 2x3s that I had. And this was a 28-degree angle that I ended up putting on both of these. But the pieces were 19.5 inches long, with a 28-degree angle cut on both sides. So that covers the legs, that covers the top, the seat, the block. The block, I can tell you, I don't know exactly what angle that is. I didn't do that kind of measurement on it, but I can tell you if you want one, the front of it is 3.5 inches high, and the back of it is 6.5 inches. So measure up that high there, 6.5 here, draw a line between the 2 points, make your cut, and you've got the angle. And then, as you can see, I attached the block to this as well to ride the channel. Let me take this down off the top of the bench, and I can put it down on the floor and give you a better look at what we're going to do next as far as the measurements go. All right, the measurements for the board that I put on this, and the material I used on this is just old fence boards. I had a neighbor who was putting up a fence and he had some boards left over apparently and had it out in the trash to be picked up, and I went, free wood? Okay, I'll take it. And I knew that someday I'd use it. Well, I used it. And I just edge jointed two of these boards and then glued them together to make this board. And this board that is on a hinge, and I'll show you that in a little bit, is 11 inches wide and 30 inches long. The other measurements that I can give you would be the measurements for these dowels. As I mentioned in the video, I actually turned these myself on the lathe. And you could certainly go out and buy dowels yourself, and you can make them as thick or as thin as you would like. I mean, I would suggest you go thicker rather than thinner, just because you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on this. But these ended up being 1.25 inch wide dowels, and there are 3 of them. They're all the same, and they're all cut to 16 inches long, and that determined obviously the width of this thing here. And there are 3 of them, one here, one in the middle that pivots on the top rail, and then the bottom for your feet. And I used PVC here basically just as a spacer so this thing wouldn't rock back and forth. And since this is a 1.25 inch dowel, I got 1.5 inch PVC, and as you can see, it just floats freely in there. It just acts as a spacer. So it's like a 1.5 inch PVC, and each side was cut 5 inches. So 5 inches separated these so that it didn't go splaying back and forth. So you'll need the PVC or something similar to space it with. I neglected to tell you the actual dimensions of this block here, and it's 11 inches long, 5 3/4 inches wide from the front to the sides, and then, as I mentioned before, the front is cut to 3.5 inches high, and in the front, and 6.5 inches high on the back, and connecting those dots gives you that angle. But the block is 11 inches long and 5 3/4 inches wide. The other crucial measurements you'll need. Now, understand, I made this for myself. And, I'm not a big guy. If you're a bigger person, these dimensions may be different for you. You just kind of have to play with it. But I'll give you the dimensions that I used for this one right here. And it's the dimensions on where to drill the holes, not only on the top rails, but also on these side supports as well. And I can tell you, the hole on the top rail that I drilled, going all the way through, is 17 inches. Exactly 17 inches was the center point for these holes on either side. Remember, I believe I said these were 30.5 inches long. Yeah, 30.5. Starting from the bottom, the center point for this one, center point for this, and center point for this are as follows. The center point for this was 2.5 inches from the bottom. The center point from this was 16 3/4 inches, and the center point for the top one was exactly 28 inches. The final things you'll need to put this together is going to be obviously the hardware. And as I mentioned before, there's just simply a door hinge back here. It's an old door hinge I had laying around, and I just mounted it on the inside, so just to provide this thing a hinge to go up and down. It doesn't really support anything, so it doesn't matter really how strong it is. I mean, they used to make these and they would just put a piece of leather in there and use that as a hinge, and that would work. As far as the hardware itself that I was using, the screws, I used 2-inch wood screws and 2.5 inch wood screws. If you'll notice up here, I used a 2-inch screw here and here, and then on this one here was a 2.5 inch screw. So wherever I had to go through more wood, I obviously used the longer screw. And those were just Phillips number 10s, and the actual 2.5 inches were number 12s. And I think that'll pretty much cover it, except, oh wait, I meant to tell you this. These dowels in here, I didn't glue them in. I didn't glue them in on purpose because I wasn't sure I was going to be happy with the position of where they are. And where they are turned out fine. But I am probably going to drill a couple holes on either side up a little higher to give me 2 different foot positions and different leveraging positions, depending on the piece of wood that I'm actually taking the bark off of. But how I attach them is I just pinned them using 1-inch exterior deck screws. I screwed them in through here and into the dowel, so that's currently what's holding it in place. And it's currently working just fine. So I think that'll wrap it up. Shaving horse. It's a fun project, and actually it's going to come in real handy too. So if you want to make one for yourself, please feel free. I think you'll enjoy it. If you have any further questions and something that I may have not covered in today's video, please leave them down below. Also down below, I'll go ahead and list all the measurements for everything that I talked about here today. So in case you forgot something, you can just double check it because I'll write it down below as well. But yeah, fun thing to do. Hope you make one too. All right, that's it for me. You guys take care. Get on your shop, make that first cut, and get something done. I'll talk to you later.